Hello, welcome to this video from Mysuru Jyotishalaya and marriage. Marriage is a topic that impacts almost all of us because marriage not just impacts the couple, it impacts people surrounding them, their kith and kin. Hence, even if few people are single, they are surely the children of their parents. So, it does impact much more people than actually those who are married. Marriage is truly a mystery, not just for people who are having problems with it. Even those who are happily married, most of them honestly would say it just happened with us, we don't know how we did, and we are happy about it. Also, for some people, while it happens very easily and with no sweat at all, there will be some who shed an ocean of sweat and their status would be work in progress. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about why it is a mystery. I think most people will agree with it. The second most important thing is marriage impacts the largest time span of our life. Depending on how early we get married and how long we live, it is definitely more than 50-60% of our lifespan. Typically, we have 168 hours a week. We work probably between 40-60 hours, a couple of hours more, but the rest of the time we have to spend with our family in one way or the other. So that would easily prove that its time span impact in our life is huge. The next aspect is there is a huge difference in quality of life if we get this right and if we get this wrong. And it is not just the quality of the life of the couple involved, it is also the quality of life of those who are their kith and kin and those who care for them. So hence, marriage becomes a single most important decision in our life. If we get it right, life is something, and if we get this wrong, life can be completely different. This is something our ancestors, I think, would have understood it a long time ago, and they have worked on it in detail as to how to get this decision right. Especially this is a very detailed topic in Vedic astrology, and astrology and marriage is something which is very well known, at least in India, within the Hindu community and others as well. So there is a three-step process that has been recommended in astrology to get this decision right, and that is what I would want to discuss in detail. Even though the roots of this is within the Hindu or Vedic astrology, there is nothing religious about it. Anybody can use it and it works for everyone. So it's entirely up to them to understand it, embrace it, and look for ways and means to improve the happiness quotient in their life. Let us now come to the three-step process to get a marriage right. The first step in the process is to understand oneself by analyzing one's own horoscope. All about what I need from marriage, and what I don't need from marriage, how do I want to position myself, where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are. There are so many things that one needs to understand, which I elaborate further. The next step in the process is to get a proper life partner, choose a life partner rather. And there are methods in terms of matching of horoscopes to get that right as well. And the third and final step in the process is to perform the marriage at a good time so that the challenges in the marriage to some degree is taken care of. So these are the three-step process that is recommended within the realm of Vedic astrology. And this is very similar to our agriculture process as well. What do we do in agriculture? First, we plow the land and understand our soil. What is it? Depending on that, we select a crop and we sow the seed at the right point in time. So this three-step process to get the marriage right is very similar to a popular agro process that is in use today. Let us now come to the first step. Analyzing the horoscope about marriage. I'm displaying a typical report we make at the end of the analysis of a horoscope as far as marriage is concerned. and let us see further what do we analyze in it. Let me now deal with what do we analyze in a horoscope for marriage in some detail. All of us have strengths and weaknesses with regard to all aspects of life. With regard to marriage also, while we will have some strength, we will have some weaknesses as well. When we analyze the horoscope, we will be able to find some planets that are anemic or weak, that has to deliver on marriage, and we may also find certain afflicted planets which are adversely impacting the marriage process. This is what we largely do in terms of analyzing a horoscope, and we come up with some amount of remedial actions, not just to address the situation in the horoscope, but also some lifestyle changes that would make it better. Let us understand how these remedial actions work. Basically, when we approach the stage of marriage in life, there is a psyche or mindset that we carry, and that is not same for everybody. Some people say, my default answer is yes to marriage unless I see an overwhelming reason to say no. That is the positive mindset for marriage. And there is an opposite one who will say, my default answer is no unless I find an overwhelming reason to say yes. So there is a third one which is very short-sighted, some kind of a T20 kind of a mindset. My default answer is yes if I can go abroad, or my default answer is yes if I can live in a particular city. My default answer is yes if some specific thing which is a short-term target in their mind. Otherwise, it's more kind of a no kind of a thing, which is actually the worst of the three mindsets. So this is what the remedial actions actually try to address and get the mindset right, so that one has a better chance of getting the decision right. Once we address this mindset situation, the next thing is to find out what is the supportive time frame for marriage. Let's first understand what is the technique adopted in terms of finding the supportive time frame. When we break down the marriage process into its in a brick and mortar approach, it's basically only three things. One, there is an initiation of the family of one's person, there is finding a life partner, and there is fulfillment of desire in the process. We only look for when all these three things is going to happen at a given point in time. If we have to give the analogy of a soccer game, in this particular, it is that moment in the game where ball is in the possession of a striker in front of an empty goal. But for the goal to happen, the striker has to push the ball inside the goal. If he doesn't do it, it doesn't happen. That is what is all about finding a supporting time window as far as marriage is concerned. Let us see how important and how it helps us. For some people, there is no need to find the supportive window at all, because even before they are mentally decided that they want to marry, they find themselves married. There are certain situations it happens like that. There may not be a greater need for such a kind of a people to do it, but there are a lot of people who are sweating an ocean of sweat, and their status remains work in progress as far as marriage is concerned. For them, they are subjected to all kinds of talk that people surrounding us keep on talking. When are you getting married? What is happening in your life? Blah 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 and all that. Every discussion, be it a breakfast table to lunch table to a dinner table to a gathering, will always be surrounding these things. Both the parents as well as the people find it extremely hard to to find a reasonable way to deal with it. This is something we cannot run away with. It's a part of our life. Just to manage this, if we get to know that my supportive time window is 2-3 years away or whatever, it gives us the mental strength that even after 2-3 years, it's the common saying that your age is increasing by the year. So how do you, if you cannot find a match today, how can you find it 3 years hence? That question gets answered, and it gives an opportunity for people to sleep well. This is the one question of finding a supporting time window for marriage. The second thing is, people have lots of questions in their mind. Marriage is an important junction in life. When they are approaching it, they don't know whether they should start with a career first, settle down in life and get married. They don't know whether they should go for a higher education or and then get married, or marriage happens first and then after these kinds of things. They will not be very sure what is it that is good for them and how is the time supporting each one of these activities in what sequence. When we analyze a horoscope, these questions can also be answered. The last and most important thing I want to say here is people also want to know about quality of their married life when we analyze horoscope. The one thing we need to understand, quality of married life is something that involves both the people involved in a marriage. Hence, accurate predictions or advice or comments on overall quality of a marriage cannot be made unless we have both the horoscopes in front of us and we analyze it together. Now let us discuss the second step in the process, matching of horoscopes for marriage. Traditionally, there was a system of computing Kuta and Gana using the birth star and birth Rashi of the couple and come up with some recommendation whether it is good for marriage or not. And there were several things like Maha Nakshatra, like a star which is a Mrigashira or Makha or Swati or Anuradha or so-called Maha Nakshatras. And it was also said there is no significant need for matching of horoscopes for these people. And there were also some bad nakshatra that was talked about, be it an Ashlesha nakshatra, be it a Mula nakshatra, be it a Jyeshta nakshatra, be it a Vishaka nakshatra. There used to be things like anybody with Ashlesha nakshatra has to marry someone where mother-in-law is not around, or somebody with Mula nakshatra has to marry someone where father-in-law is not around. Or if it is Jyeshta or Vishaka, it is about the brothers-in-law in question. I don't think these are very relevant. Between me and my father, we have worked on this aspect for over 5 decades now, and we can confidently debunk these things as of today. These things are not at all relevant, and this is not the right way to approach it. However, during olden days, there was a need to follow these things, simply because today if somebody says it's a chest pain or a backache or something, we take them, put them on a monitor, take an ECG and all that, then they decide how is their heart and everything else. But that was simply not possible during Easter years, and people have to check the pulse and few other things and has to make a decision, because simply these equipments were not available. Even as we speak, there may be some remote areas where the old situation might still exist. So similarly, astrology and making a horoscope was a bit of a complicated or a complex exercise involving complex math. It was not feasible for everybody to have a horoscope, so they made some kind of an easy process, a shortcut process, wherein they can just have the star, birth star and zodiac sign and make something about it. And even they went one step further and they coded the birth star for the first letter of the name, and they started even matching name. And in Kannada, in Karnataka, we call it Hesaruvala. So these were the technique that were used. I think it worked during those days, because even for marriage there, the choice was very limited. You have to marry someone either in your village or neighboring villages, and you have to deal with half a dozen to a dozen choice. It's not like today's time where you have got thousands appearing in your own selection criteria, and you are going through it on a matrimony website to various other means one has today. So whatever that method was relevant for that time, probably 30, 40, 50 years ago. And even it could be relevant in certain remote areas where the situation is very similar to what it was like for us 40, 50 years ago. But today's situation is very different, and tolerance and patience and mental stress situation of people is very different. So it is extremely important to get the matching right, to have better chances of getting our marriage decision right. So then let's see, when we do matching differently, what do we care for? There are 4 very important things we care for. The first thing is how happy the people can be when they are together. We call it compatibility when they are together. The second key criteria is how well they trust, connect with each other when they are away. Compatibility when away is the second criteria. The third criteria is compatibility in health. It is extremely important that the health of the couple need to be similar, and not just that if one person is having a weak health, it is not very easy to match with a person who is extremely healthy. I will explain that little later. The last thing is about longevity. The lifespan has to be similar either, because the marriages where one person outlives the other person significantly cannot be considered as a very successful marriage. These are the 4 critical things that we look at in matching of horoscopes. These are the only 4 things that one cannot find out when they meet the other person. The families meet, they discuss, they check background and all that. Making an assessment on these 4 parameters are extremely difficult, but these 4 parameters remain the 4 cornerstones of success for marriage, and astrology is the only means to have any idea about it. Hence it becomes extremely important to check these 4 things before we make a final decision on marriage. We have talked about compatibility. Let us understand how compatibility is assessed while analyzing a horoscope. All horoscopes have strengths or yoga, whatever we can call it, which is normally cherished. There is absolutely no problem on this side of the horoscope. At the same time, all horoscopes have what is called as dosha or affliction, which is what needs to be endured in a long-term relationship. So the best way to ensure or make it easier for a long-term relationship to last happily is to find similarity in afflictions, which we otherwise call as dosha samya. So normally our mindset is, if I am limping, I think limping is normal, and my mindset towards limping is either neutral to positive actually. If somebody else is limping, it doesn't hurt me, I'm perfectly okay with that situation. That is what I'm kind of saying. It's a similarity or dosha samya we are looking at in horoscope. This is something that's spread across different aspects of life. So that's how we come across overall matching in terms of horoscope with the help of dosha samya. Actually, matching in health is also equally important. If I am extremely healthy and I do not know how a pill or a prick at the middle of the night makes such a huge difference in terms of having a good sleep, I don't experience it in my life. If my life partner needs a pill or a prick at the middle of the night, it is not easy for me to understand and respond appropriately. That's why rather than somebody who is not very healthy looking for a very healthy life partner, they should look for a life partner with similar kind of health condition, because what they need when there is something that help they require in terms of their health is understanding of the other partner of the situation rather than how healthy or anything else the other partner is. So this is what the concept of compatibility, and that's how we look at dosha samya to make an assessment on this aspect. Then there are 2 other things that often asked while matching a horoscope. Some people want to know about progeny, a possibility of having children. I will deal with it a little bit more detail later in the video, but right now I say this is neither a showstopper or nor analyzed, because if progeny is an issue, there are many ways to deal with it, which we can detail out at a later stage of the video. Then there is next thing. People are, this question is in almost everybody's mind. Some people ask openly, some people ask indirectly. Their questions are about virginity and infidelity and all that. Here I want to state very clearly, it is possible to assess the mindset, or how tolerant or how rigid, or what is the mindset of a person towards these two factors are. That is definitely possible. But making a judgment on these two is almost like pronouncing a capital punishment with merely on circumstantial evidence. So we don't make any final judgment on these two aspects, but definitely we have the ability to judge the mindset of a person on these two aspects. In these kinds of situations, matching of mindset is extremely important, because if people get to know of certain things midway through their married life, and if it completely alters their life going forward, it is a catastrophe. So this is also an important check that happens in matching of horoscopes. I'm now showing a typical matching report that we make for a bride and a bridegroom. Everything in green matches here. Everything in red doesn't match as far as the Kuta and Gana table is concerned. We do compute Kuta and Gana, even though we clearly say that we don't base our final assessment based on Kuta and Gana at all. Simply because since generation this is being followed, and people want to know how many Kutas and Ganas match. To satisfy their curiosity, we do provide this table, but our conclusion is not at all dependent on how many Kutas and Ganas match. In summary, we give it in 3 colors. Basically, if the matching of horoscope is good and we are completely satisfied with it, we summarize in green. There is a situation that the 4 checks I talked about not matching in certain cases, but what is not matching may not be operating in the critical part of a marriage period, possibly next 30 years. In our assessment, we may feel it is not extremely critical. In such cases, we say the matching is ordinary and we conclude in yellow. And in my mind, it is pretty safe to move forward in these cases, where actually the focus has to go on aspects outside of horoscopes that you see in terms of what you evaluate in a marriage proposal, and you should go based on how other aspects of this proposal match or do not match, and not worry too much about the horoscope matching if it is in yellow. If it is in red, we are clearly advising that it is not the right option to move forward. Now we come to the last step, which is finding auspicious time or muhurta. There are multiple checks that are done to find the timing right. The essential part of this finding muhurta is finding Saptama Shuddhi and so on and so forth. I don't want to convert this into a class of how to make a muhurta. We do those multiple checks to find the right time, and this is given out in the table that you see alongside. This table contains all critical information that you need to make an invitation card. And there are one key thing we see here is we provide the muhurta time, that lagna start and lagna end. This is typically about 15-20 minutes or 30 minutes, seldom more than 30 minutes. Entire marriage cannot be performed during this period. The key part of the marriage needs to be performed during this period. So-called key part for some people is called Vikshana, some people it is Dhara, for some people it is Mangalya Dharana and all that. So each subsect has their own key event within a marriage. That is what one has to perform during this time. If the marriage is between people of different faith, the different caste and all that, there needs to be some discussion as to determine what is the key portion of the marriage ahead of time, because they need to get that key portion within this particular time. Also, we give few things. There is a few doshas we look for, that is Panchaka dosha and Tara doshas. If there is any kind of remedy that is needed, we indicate also. Panchaka is a parameter which says, whether the combination of the day, tithi, then the lagna and nakshatra, everything we have got it right or not. The Panchaka Shanti is normally done by the host of the function, mostly the bride's parent in most cases. It could be someone else also, depending on the case. And the Tara Shanti individually for either the bride or the bridegroom is indicated, and that's what they should do. And this is done at the beginning of the day of the marriage when they do Sankalpa. Normally when they come up on the podium and they start the rituals at that time, these shantis are done, and the relevant priests are very conversant with it. I think once they have this report, they should be able to deal with it. I don't see much of an issue with it. One thing all of you should note, both the Lagna timing as well as the Rahu Kala timing that is indicated for the day of the function, is the default location used is Mysore. If the location is a few hundred kilometers this side or that side, the difference could be at best couple of minutes. From Mysore to Bangalore, it's typically a couple of minutes is the difference. But if the location is very different, especially for foreign locations, one has to request by stating the location to and get the correct Lagna as well as Rahu Kala timing, because Mysore timings doesn't work. I would now quickly move on to some of the post-marital challenges we deal with. I mean, there are very many varied challenges which needs to be looked individually, which I cannot cover in this particular video. But two common topics I cover. One is marital discard and other is progeny. Displaying a typical marital discard analysis report we make alongside. Here the first and fundamental question is, what is the right thing at this point in time, either separation or rapprochement? In our experience, whenever effective use of matching of horoscopes is made, the marital discard cases we get are very few and very rare. So one of the preventive steps for marital discard is effective use of matching of horoscopes prior to the marriage. But of course, it cannot be done all the time. So still, if there is a problem on hand, we need to look at what best can be done. As I said, the first assessment is to see what is the fit case here. Is it separation or is it rapprochement? A rapprochement case is advised if there is a more than fair opportunity for the couple to live happily after making certain adjustment going forward. Maybe not now, maybe a few months to a couple of years later, even that is fine. If the life ahead is going to be better, rapprochement is advised. Even in cases where we feel a life ahead is not going to be all that very good even after separation, even cases where we find that life can be a little challenging, we would rather lean towards rapprochement rather than separation. But there will be cases where separation would be absolute clear option. In that particular case, we are not afraid of advising it and also mapping a proper life ahead for people after separation and how they can be happy. So life is very precious, relatively short, even if we live longer. So we have to find all means that we can be happy during the rest of our life, even if we get few decisions wrong. Once we make the rapprochement or separation decision, what to advise, the next thing is to come up with the supportive time window when it is relatively easy to execute either separation or rapprochement. That way it makes the whole thing relatively easier. And what is added on to that is we also suggest certain remedial actions, details of which you can watch in our remedial actions video to kind of facilitate this process also. Either separation or rapprochement, if the process is relatively smooth, the changeover to the next phase of life will be smoother as well. So there are one more thing that is needed when we are dealing with rapprochement. The marital discord can have certain fundamental reasons why it has become as big as it has at this point in time. There will be few situations like one of the two couples having opportunities to do well in career or do something, and they're not able to do it for several other reasons. We can advise their focus a little bit onto something which they are good at, so that they get a positive diversion of mind and the life can be much better. In certain cases, family expansion, having children can be a solution. There are varied kind of out of the box solutions possible to address the pain point which is causing the marital discord. Wherever such situations or opportunities are possible, we do suggest that as well. And in the case of separation, absolutely there is a need to kind of provide some insight into how can we map the life ahead, and that's what we do as well. Now finally, I would want to discuss about progeny or possibility of childbirth. This is, it's not an issue at all for quite a few, but for some, it's a major issue. This is where astrology kind of targets safe delivery and not just conception. And a use of astrology here can be very meaningful for those who are undergoing the agony of not fulfilling their dream of having their child. The basic approach lies in the fact first to determine whether a child is possible in normal and natural course or not, or there is a need for any kind of medical assistance. Paladipika gives a detailed mathematical procedure to compute fertility of the couple individually, and it comes out with 5 discrete values: 0, 25, 50, 75 and 100. 0 means child in normal natural course unlikely. 100 means child in normal and natural course very possible. And if the number is 50 or above, we do say child in normal natural course possible. If it is below 50, we say some kind of a medical assistance may be required. What kind of medical assistance? I think the doctors and the right people decide. We only say, you seek some medical assistance. Even in either case, whether be it in normal or natural course or be it medical assistance, it does not work in all the time windows. Certain time windows are prone to miscarriages in certain cases, so that should not be suggested. Therefore, it is also equally important to come up with a supportive time window, either to pursue medical assistance or even for normal and natural course, so that the safe delivery is more likely. This is another aspect of it. The third aspect is we also suggest remedial actions, which we detail out in the other video in terms of doing certain charity or dana or wearing certain gemstones and all that, the details of which you can find in the other videos of ours. These are the things we normally suggest. One thing we have noticed, that this particular strategy works for people who have had earlier IVF failures also, because IVF doesn't work all the time, and even those who are doing it doesn't precisely understand why it hasn't worked in certain circumstances, and also why it has worked when it has worked. There is a bit of a mystery is also there in that particular process. Finding a time window, we have found very high success rate for couples which have had IVF failures as well. This particular analysis is normally used where people have found some issue in terms of having children in normal and natural course. It can also be used by those couples who would want to postpone this indefinitely, because if they know what are the right point in time, they have good opportunity for it, they have to keep that in mind while they are making decision on this. One thing they need to remember, this is, you can only make hay when sun shines and fly the kite when it is windy. You cannot fly the kite when it is raining. Similarly, this is a very natural process. Most of us think we can time it to our advantage. It is not always possible. So kind of having this kind of analysis and having this information ahead of time would be handy in certain cases. One thing, this is only one prediction which needs a lot of effort and time, so we cannot finish it off in one go in a face-to-face discussion. We need usually at least a few days to a week to finish the computation and then discuss it. Since it involves more effort, it also costs a little bit more. Hence, if you have any questions on these things, please do find out with us ahead of time so that you have all clarity on this thing. Every other question we can answer face to face in one meeting, but question on progeny needs a lot of effort and it also needs a lot of time. So we normally do it in couple of meetings. That's all I wanted to discuss in this particular video. In terms of Vedic astrology and marriage, I just want to summarize like this. Marriage is definitely a bit of a mystery in all of our life. It is something equally important. Within the Hindu community, there is use of Hindu Vedic astrology. Some people do it knowingly, some people do it unknowingly. In either case, they are following it in some way or the other. And also, the success rate of Hindu marriages are far higher than any other community. I think that is the testimony for its effectiveness. But this is not just designed for Hindus or any specific religion. It can be used by anybody and it works for all. I think it does help significantly in improving overall happiness quotient. Thank you.